Hello everyone and welcome to our channel Career Talk. My name is Sunan Sharma. I'm an agile consultant based in Netherlands, and at Career Talk we invite industry experts from around the world to share their real experience with all of us. And today we are going to discuss behavioral project manager interview questions shared by our group member who recently attended an interview. And to help us, we are glad to have Arijeet Bose with us, who has over 2.5 decades of experience in IT industry, and throughout his vast career, he has worked in multiple geographies like USA and UK. And he's currently a program manager at IBM and has previously worked at companies like EY, Wipro, Cognizant, and many more. So, friends, before we start, I have a small request. If you find this session helpful, which I'm sure you will, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss future session with Arjit. Okay, all right. So let's get started. Hello, Arjit, and thank you for joining us today. Arjit, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sunand, and thanks for having me on your Career Stock channel. Uh, it's been a very good experience going through your channel and all the valuable information and discussions that I see, and I'm sure they are of great benefit to the project management and the overall community. And there's a lot of value that comes from it. So thank you. Um, would you like to know something about me?
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. Like, if you can just briefly, if you can tell about yourself, your journey so far. Yeah, that's okay.
Sure. Thanks, Sunand. Uh, so I have about 2.5 decades of IT industry experience, mostly in services organizations. I've worked with consulting and managed delivery engagements. And throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to work delivering solutions across industries, with BFS, media, healthcare, auto, and oil and gas. So this experience has been invaluable for me uh, to really appreciate the domain and also on the execution. I'm passionate about project management, an area that I stepped into about close to 15 years back, and have had the opportunity to lead projects and programs, again, across various industries, both on the application and product development, infrastructure modernization, and various process and optimization initiatives that are typically part of the work that service organizations do on a regular basis. I'm currently a program manager in the consulting area and have been more recently responsible for developing digital products and solutions in the oil and gas sector. Thank you, Sunand.
Wonderful, Arjit. Uh, really appreciate. I'm sure like our audience will be definitely benefit from your vast experience. Okay, so if you allow, shall we start with our Q&A?
Sure.
Okay. So the very first question is, let's say you've just taken over a project that has been, experiencing frequent scope changes over the period of time and missed the deadlines, and the team morale is completely like down, shattered. So how do you assess this kind of, project status, and what kind of plan which you are going to create to address all these issues, because you have to now rebuild the team confidence as well, apart from managing all these constraints as a project manager. So would you like to share your some experience on that?
Sure. And that's a great question, Sunand. This is something that, as project and program managers, we do encounter um, throughout most of our projects. Um, what's important when we look at this problem where we have frequent scope changes leading to missed deadline and the team is concerned and worried about what's going on, uh, try to take a step back and understand the current state and do a little bit of a comprehensive assessment. This is something, as a project manager, it's very important for the project and for their own development as an individual as well. So when we do a comprehensive assessment, we talk to stakeholders, we talk to our team members, and try to get as much as possible to any root causes that are contributing to the current situation. Um, engage, and as you unearth that information, as you get more and more information, try to connect with certain key stakeholders, try to understand their perspectives as well. What are some of the areas that's been bothering their area, and and then again, once you have this information, we could try to look at a recovery solution or a plan of action, right? So again, in many cases, from my experience, uh, there are situations where we have projects scope creep, sorry, and it's important that as a project manager, we have those right conversations and the right actions to address that. And in the process, when we come up with a recovery plan, one first point I would like to reinforce is uh, establish a very clear project objective between now and what's remaining on the project, based on your analysis and the assessment that you've done. Number two is look at your change management processes and ensure that they are followed more effectively. Make sure your criteria for evaluating change requests, that's well understood by everyone and they are better documented and approved. When you look back at your governance process in terms of communication and the collaboration, if there is a way by which you can improve it and communicate better, that's also an important area as you come up with in your recovery plan. And this involves, you're looking at your status reporting, uh, your one-on-one discussions, if there is a better way to engage your stakeholders and also your team members. So all of that is very important as we try to get our project back on track. And now, sometimes we may need to revise the schedule and also the resources as well. And if you're looking at any tasks or any milestones, that can be replanned, it's important that we those tasks are streamlined and in order to mitigate any delays. And of course, as you do that, as you do this, rescheduling of the resources, make sure that your team has the skills and the resources and they're able to commit to the new schedule, right? So that's as per your plan is concerned. But then again, as a project manager, as a seasoned practitioner, it's important that you provide and motivate and support the team on an ongoing basis. So try to rebuild the team morale, and there are various ways to do it. Talk to them, have regular check-ins with them. Ensure that in the process of doing so, you are able to, foster a very supportive work environment, right? There's always improvements that we can do to build up a collaborative work environment. That's something that I've always believed, and there's no end to that. So make sure that by doing this, the team members are motivated, they continue to stay engaged, right? So I think through these 3 to 4 steps, we are able to, and an ongoing process of monitoring. Uh, these are all good strategies to get your project back on track. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Arjit, for that detailed, elaborated answer. Great, wonderful. Okay, let's move on to the next question. And the next question is, let's say your project uh, relies heavily on a critical external vendor who suddenly goes out of business, just let's say bankrupt. Now that leave you without any essential services which are very important for you, your project, your program. So how do you quickly adapt your project plan to mitigate the impact of this unexpected event, and how you ensure that your project continue over the period of time? So if you would like to share some experience or some solution of this situation, Arjit.
Sure. I can try to propose a hypothetical situation. Um, yeah, so of course, I've had situations in my projects where we had to go with vendor changes, and the impact on the stakeholders on the project has not been good over the short term. However, there is always a way to get these things back on track. Um, and So what we do is typically, again, assess what's the immediate impact. So you have your project milestones and you have your roadmap, and what is the risk that is more immediate because of this, the vendor going? Now, in many cases, I wouldn't say in many cases, but in certain cases, we have situations where the writing is on the wall. There is a risk, and definitely you are mitigating it. So as you assess the immediate impact, you would have already started identifying alternative sources or maybe a potential replacement. And as you do that, as project managers, we have to assess the financial impact, number one. And also, as we do that analysis, we have to take our stakeholders um, uh, into collaboration and communicate with them and propose your solution to them as well. So again, as you have maybe a couple of choices, uh, as a PM, it's important that we get into the details, do that analysis, and then get back to the decision boards and try to get that feedback as well. So basis the feedback, start developing a plan of action, of a plan of implementation. Now, this could involve getting more support from your contingency plan, having to allocate more resources. So you have ensure that your change process is being followed and you have all the approvals necessary in order to make this change. So again, um, and as we get the approvals, as we follow a change management process, um, come up with a revised timeline that reflects the potential delays of the changes in scope, right? In more often than not, uh, even as we try to develop, we have an alternate option. We have the approvals in place. There could be certain delays uh, in the delivery. So talk to your client, your stakeholders, and communicate this to them, and look at what's the best option. Uh, the final thing, again, as I was telling in the previous question as well, is monitoring and adapting to the situation. So when you have a new entity, that's important for the delivery of your project. It's important that you constantly monitor the situation, engage with them, ensure that their deliverables, dependencies, and whatever milestones that that particular vendor has on your plan, they are on track and they are not going to cause any additional delay to your project. So so in these 2 to 3 ways, steps, we can try to manage the situation with a new vendor on board, and ensure that our project continues to progress.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Arjit, for that. Just want to summarize quickly whatever you mentioned, and just want to add one small point over here. Said that, of course, as you mentioned, we have to do a immediate impact assessment. So basically, what services or the product this particular vendor is provided are no longer available for us, right? And which part of our project are directly affected. So we have to find about the dependencies and the timeline. And the third thing is about the financial and the legal ramification, right? That is tied to that particular vendor failure. So we should also go back and check some contracts and penalties which are in place, because sometimes people forget to do this thing, but there's always some thing out there. And as you also mentioned about the contingency plan, so we have to activate our contingency plan, which is there in our risk register or somewhere out there. So we need to engage our backup vendors we have identified during our risk planning phase. And of course, we have to leverage our in-house resources to take care of any critical service temporarily, maybe. And we can also redistribute our work among other project stakeholders or different vendors which we have identified. So yeah, that's a small thing just I want to add about this financial legal ramification thing. Okay. Yeah,
Yep.
thanks, Arjit. Let's move on to our next question. So so let's say you are leading a project where stakeholders have conflicting priorities, right? So each of them insist on their requirements, and yeah, I mean, everyone is want to take a precedence over the other, and it's very difficult situation to say no to one and say yes to other. So how do you prioritize all these stakeholder needs? And of course, you have to maintain a alignment between the overall objective of your project and program. So if you want to share some of your past experience or any approach which done it to manage all this conflict stakeholders demand, Arjit.
Sure. Thanks, Sunand. Yeah, I think this is a great question. because as projects and environments get more complex, the primary source of complexity comes from stakeholders. So I think it's important that we have that level of continuous engagement with them. So yes, I've encountered this on multiple programs where our project requirements. So we have a set of requirements, but in terms of prioritization, we are not able to get all of the stakeholders on board, and everybody for every one of them, their feature or their capability or the service is a priority for them. So I was leading this program where we were doing a first of a kind solution, uh, and this was in the domain of sustainability. So this was uh, a very key product or service that we were providing within the firm, which would really lead to a lot of cost savings in terms of reducing the cost of travel and also improve sustainability. Um, so when we went over the product features, there were stakeholders that wanted a particular integration, while another stakeholder just wanted it, the key products to be key features to be developed, and look at integration maybe in phase two. Um, so as and as I looked into these dialogues in the meetings, uh, it's important to understand that this could lead to some sort of a block in the future. So what, as project managers or program managers, we need to be doing is to facilitate open communication and collaboration. Listen to them, try to understand why one person's needs is, where that person is coming from, or where that person, uh, why that particular feature or a capability is a priority to them. Uh, so that's the first thing: facilitate open communication and collaboration. Uh, and again, as you do that, talk to them one on one as well, and try to get more in terms of the criticality. Um, and also, and as you get to the criticality, um, it's important to understand what is the impact of these features or these capabilities on your project, because as a program manager, you will have to have that strategic vision in mind, right? While you have a 6, 12, 18 months roadmap to launch a new product or a solution. So it's important to understand that within that, where do these features come in, or these capabilities come in. Uh, so as you go about, with this analysis, and then also looking at working with your team to estimate all of this information, it's important that you also seek the guidance from your steering committee, because in many cases, what I've seen is that the stakeholders are fairly senior in an organization, and it may not be your within your remit to have a complete influence on all the stakeholders. So, which is why it's important that look at the features, and then put in your prioritization and also your estimation of them, and then go back to the steering committee and also try to get their buy-in as well, right? So the joint approach of engaging with the stakeholders and also seeking uh, guidance and feedback from your governance board will help you prioritize, and in the process, manage these conflicting priorities. So over to you, Sunand.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Arjit. So just want to share a small incident or experience, I would suggest. So, of course, as a project manager, as you mentioned, we have to, the very first step is we have to define the overall objective and the goal of the project. So that objective is a kind of reference point when we're going to prioritize the stakeholder needs. So what happened in one of the telecom project, that one stakeholder wanted to focus on improving the user experience, while the another is pushing for a technical optimization that would not be visible to the end user. And the overall objective was to enhance the customer satisfaction. So user experience improvement took priority, though we also balance the technical enhancement where is feasible. So the thing which help us in that particular scenario was that we have something called Rasi matrix. This is nothing but a power and influence matrix, which I'm sure like most of the project manager will have in their projects. So basically, it's nothing but like who is responsible for delivering the project, who is accountable for decisions, and who should be consulted during any key decisions, and who need to be informed for progress and decisions, things like that. So that really help us, that give that kind of direction which we are looking for. This basically structure help us to clarify the decision making authority and identify which stakeholder need have more weight, right, especially in the context of the overall business goal. So that's something which we have done. And of course, as you also mentioned, like we have all these communication should be very transparent, like share perspective, other perspective, highlight the conflict priorities, and understand the reasoning behind each request, right? So that's again very important for us. And the last thing which I just want to share is that if we have any kind of data prioritization technique, like it can be anything, it can be, for example, cost benefit analysis, or let's say weighted scoring model, it can be Moscow, it can be anything. So if we are able to quantify the impact of these requests on the project timeline, that's definitely going to help everyone. Then they understand the bigger picture. So yeah, I mean that's something which we also can look forward. And of course we can present some kind of compromise based on these things. We can do kind of trade-off that okay, this is your priority and we will take it into a next sprint or next milestone, things like that. So yeah, that's something just want to add over
Yeah,
here, Arjit.
I think that's a great point, Sunand, because user experience, from my experience as well, I've seen it becomes a priority for a good number of stakeholders. Uh, and sometimes that becomes more important than some of the non-functional areas like performance. So that's something from my experience as well. But I think the key, as you mentioned, is uh, for the project manager to have the detailed analysis in place and look at where these fall into their overall roadmap,
Correct.
and then of course get the help from the governance if needed. As you start implementing the solution. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, Arjit. Okay. Thank you. Let's move on. So next question is very interesting because I myself have faced these kind of situation in the past. So the question is, let's say your project is involving integrating multiple legacy systems, right, with the different levels of compatibility and complexity. So how do you plan and execute these kind of integration processes, to make sure that all these integration will go smoothly without much disturbance to the existing operations? So if you can share your experience, and I know like you have worked a lot on most of these infra related projects in the past. So please, Arjit, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sunand. I think uh, that's a very good question. And I'll have to go a little back into my early career, and there was an opportunity to integrate multiple client server applications into a web-based solution. Um, so again, while this is not exactly similar, but it's still again the reason for doing that is because client server was getting more obsolete. It was the applications would be unsupported over a period of time, so the need to redo or have a new solution. And this was the time when Java and J2E was getting a lot of prominence, and then a lot of applications were getting rewritten, or a new application in a web-based environment. Uh, so from my experience, I could say that it was a very complex effort because uh, uh, putting it looking at it uh, holistically, we had to look at um, we had to look at the, of course, the the user interface, the database aspects, and of course the middleware and other components that come into. So it was complicated, complex, more from a functional and also from a technical perspective. Uh, so typically, what we would do is again look at the current state of the applications, look at the capabilities of each of your legacy applications. What is the data formats, what are the interfaces there, and identify the compatibility issues, or data quality issues, or performance issues as well, and document these existing workflows, and also the interdependency between systems, right? And then as you go about doing that, next step, you define your scope or the goal of your integration. So as you come to the drawing board, look at what is it that you want into this new solution. Start with the outcome of this project. It could be seamless flow of data between the various capabilities, or efficiency, performance, and the key is, of course, again, reduce costs over a period of time, right? I think that's uh, a major factor why which we do those projects. So yes, you determine the scope of the integration, including which systems will be involved and the extent of the functional integration. And then, of course, you come up with the architecture, um, technically document, how those systems will interact into that single whole. What is the middleware functionalities? What is a middleware solution that's required? So again, this is the whole architecture, right? We have the data mapping. Look at all the rules. How you handle errors and so on and so forth. So once your integration architecture is in place, um, try to execute the integration, and then we do it in phases. Uh, Look at what are those major chunks. One of them could be, number one, developing the new interface, or the product development. The second one could be, of course, integrate the data migration. Of course, these can be done in parallel, and then you do the testing. And then again, typically, as you do these things, it will typically follow your agile framework, agile methodology workflow, right? So you have your sprint or iteration structure around your product development and all these pieces, and then through manageable phases, you move ahead and release it into higher environments, and thereafter launch the integrated solution. Then, of course, as you launch it, it's important after you launch that you monitor and you optimize on a regular basis. One of the key things is, when you have a new application, there is a lot of end user engagement and very focused engagement that's required in terms of helping them understand the impact, the trainings involved, and so on. So that's in general kind of like a summary of how you actually migrate a legacy to a new solution. Over to you, Sunant.
Okay, Arjit. Yeah, thank you for that. So, though I really want to add my perspective, but then this question or this session is going to be long. So, I think you have already covered all these steps in detail. So, let me not to go through it again. So, let's jump to our next question, Arjit, if you allow.
Sure.
Okay. So, next question is, so let's assume that your project has some regulatory compliance issues, and that could stop the progress of your project, and your project is now having a lot of penalties. So how do you handle these kind of requirements, while keeping the project on track and on time? So yeah, I mean, sometimes as a project manager, we tend to ignore these kind of things, but sometimes they came back strongly on all of us. So yeah, Arjit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think great question, Sunand.
Yeah, because sorry, we focus a lot on delivery part, and sometimes these we thought like it's like kind of gray area for us, like honestly, just sometimes. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So yes, I have had some experience in earlier part, not as a project manager, where I did appreciate the importance of SOX compliance in the banking domain, and HIPAA compliance for pharma and healthcare domain as well. And as you mentioned, this came out of the blue, which is not a very good thing, because uh, it causes a delay, and you really cannot go live unless it is implemented, because this is a much bigger risk, not only for your project, for the broader organization. if you try to get into uh, if you deliver something without the necessary compliance in place. Um, but having said that, see, in many cases today, I think there is a lot of clarity typically on what are the compliance areas uh, for any product. Now, I'll just deviate a little bit and talk in terms of IT security and legal compliance. Now, this is something which uh, for most organizations, they have to go through before you can launch your product. So, so that's something that you will plan for. So it will definitely not come as a surprise. And so this is another milestone or a sub project within your overall project management or program management aspect. Um, I would say that uh, compliance has to be prioritized. And in this case, from my experience, Sunand, uh, what I've seen is your product development and your all that aspects can go very quickly because your team is under your control. But in many cases, the security and legal compliance teams are not part. They are part of a sub team, and they come into you for a very specific period of time, and then they will have very specific requirements as a checklist. And as a project manager, you have to ensure that all of them is completed in order to meet your milestones. So I think that's where the challenge is. So it's important to prioritize compliance, uh, put that in your roadmap as you do your high level project visioning or your requirements workshop, and understand at that point what is the total estimated effort for to meet the compliance goals, so that you can compliance and regulatory goals, so that you can allocate the necessary the resources and the budget. So engage them early, and if required, take any advice from a legal consultant or within your organization, and so that you can get a real time view into the details and what it would take to actually get these things completed. So from my experience, it's important that we engage our product owners uh, and also the organizational compliance teams, so that there is an initial there is a proper understanding of the importance and the priority of compliance. Um, and then again, we do a risk assessment, uh, and then understand what are those typical compliance pitfalls, what could go wrong, and develop certain mitigation strategies to address them proactively. And uh, and of course, as we do this, we have got to make sure that our product roadmap or our project plans are updated, and there is a very clear understanding of all the milestones and the tasks, where they come in, what is the dependencies, as we go ahead with the product development and the implementation. Uh, so that's a summary of how we treat compliance and regulatory topics within your project management or product development lifecycle.
Yeah, great, Arjit. Thank you for sharing that. Just quickly, like one. So when I was in IBM, I'm not sure now whether it's happening or not. There is something called process champs. I mean, so what they used to do that from all maybe program or some project, they just choose one or two other people from the project itself, just to get that kind of visibility, because sometimes we as a developer, we don't spend much time in thinking about all this compliance and regulatory thing. We are so focused with our all these development efforts, right? So they introduced that, and yeah, I mean, I was also part of that team, so that's why I'm just sharing. But yeah, I mean, I agree with that, whatever you have mentioned. So yeah, thank you for sharing this. Okay, so let's move on to our next question, Arjit.
Sure.
Okay. So let's say as a project manager, you encounter a resistance from your team members. Maybe they are reluctant to adopt any new project management methodology or tool. So how do you promote that kind of changes so that your team can accept those changes? So for example, let's say you want to introduce any new project management tool, to streamline certain processes, but then team is comfortable with existing tool. For example, let's say your team is using a traditional waterfall approach, right, for years and years, and now you want to transition them to the, let's say, agile, right? So how you are going to infuse that idea, per se, I would say.
Yeah. Uh, so I think, Sunand, when we look at today's context, um, it's my experience is more of a hybrid approach. While in the past we just had the traditional waterfall methodology, with clear stage gates of requirements, analysis, design, etc. Um, Today we know that that's too ideal in nature, and we will have to be we'll have to appreciate the dynamic nature of today's projects and and the products that we have that we deploy. So so my experience with agile is, again, uh, while um, while agile is it's key for uh, addressing say resource requirement dynamics. It's important to appreciate the structure of a waterfall kind of a system as well. Like, going back to my previous question on the security and compliance. So while your interface development or your product development can be agile, your security compliance, performance testing, uh, change implementation, so all of that, or transition related activities, they can still follow a waterfall structure. So what team members need to understand today is it's always a hybrid approach. And so your question is, how do you promote the change acceptance? Um, so in my experience, I start with trying to understand what is their experience with agile, waterfall, and a combination of two. I think that's the starting point. Um, so have that foster an open communication with them. Try to understand what has been their experience, and then give your perspective as well in terms of the pros and cons of either, and how sometimes integrating the two can be most beneficial for your particular project. So, and then of course, there would be people who are already familiar with this. So try to get their insights into, how you can actually implement this kind of a hybrid methodology. So in the process, we try to create an engaged team that actually is able to, over time, appreciate, these methodologies. So as you go about this engagement and this communication and this discussion with the team, uh, I organize, any trainings or any handholding that's required, because at the end of the day, with agile, it's important that all the team members have at least a minimum basic or the same level of understanding with respect to the regular usage of its capabilities, like Azure DevOps or Jira for that matter. So so again, I would say that while initially the resistance would always be there, but through a process of uh, open communication, sharing of information, and also the trainings that are provided, we can overcome this resistance to accepting a new project management methodology or a tool to you.
Wonderful, Arjit. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay. Uh, okay, so let's move on to the next question. Now, this is again a very common scenario which everyone is facing nowadays. So let's say you have a project team with the people from different cultural backgrounds, different geographies. Someone is into India, USA, and let's say other part of the world, and each one of them is having their own way of communicating, right? So how do you make sure that everyone feel included? Everyone have that kind of teamwork, collaboration. So how you ensure that everyone communicate well? Because the way someone is, let's say, more direct in USA, or let's say in Europe, compared to people who are into India, or maybe let's say if you go to other countries, let's say China and Vietnam and Malaysia, for example. So then again, people are uh, they just note on each and everything. So which is again very difficult for some time to understand whether they actually know the problem statement correctly or not. So how do you ensure that the team will have that kind of culture where everyone can be open and then they can share their thought without any issues. Yeah, Ajit.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question, Sunand. And this is something that is always an ongoing process. There's always, things that we can learn and improve when it comes to, building the relationships, having a clear and transparent communication. Um, but then, I can take the example of myself as a product manager coming into a new team where I've got resources from different countries, um, and also from different parts within a country as well. Uh, so starting with a new team, where on a new project, it can be a little bit time consuming trying to get everybody on the common path. But I would start with initially, before we get into understanding communication styles and cultures and other things, uh, have share the project vision, have a very clear discussion on what your project or your product is expected to develop. What are all those key milestones? So the conversation is more around your project or your program objectives. Now, again, the agile mindset encourages openness and transparency. So as we get into initiating it and getting into the execution, I would also start talking to talking with them individually and in groups, and in the process come up with certain clear communication expectations. Uh, Number one. Number two is, of course, encourage active listening. So this is something that as project managers, as program managers, we must be doing all the time. And in the process, the team would learn through the example that you create, right? That you are actually listening actively, and you're creating that environment. You're trying to build that environment of trust and collaboration, right? So that's set a foundation. As you start building up the trust, uh, you will have members who are more engaged, uh, and they're open to collaborating within them, appreciating the cultural differences, and so on. Uh, One of the things that I have seen is that it's sometimes important to uh, appreciate the unique contributions, and you foster that sense of belonging, and that's a good area, uh, which is really helpful. And sometimes if you have the opportunity, offer some cultural training workshops, and try to increase some awareness of certain cultural nuances. As you mentioned, certain examples. Uh, uh, you know, so it's important that everybody in the team understands that there is a nuance to a particular culture, and that way they can appreciate where they are coming from. So, yes, have that openness and the transparency when it comes to engaging with your entire team, and this plays a big role, right, in overcoming any cultural challenges or nuances that might come in the way of executing the project. So, over to you, Sunil.
Okay, Arjit, yeah, thank you for that. Okay, let's move on to the next question. So let's say the project which you are seeing right now, let's say it involve a significant technical advancement, and that require a lot of upskilling of your project team so that they can adapt new tools and processes. So how do you develop a training plan basically for them so that your team member will have that kind of necessary skills and knowledge? Because again, that's one of the KPI, that okay, how many team members in your project are upscaled and have those certification or training has been done, because nowadays organization focus a lot of on training part of the they want to basically upskill their existing workforce, right? So that's again, I think, one of the key focus area right now from the management, from the project manager perspective. So how you involve yourself in this whole training thing?
Yeah. Thanks, Sunil. So, I would say that when it comes to technological advancements or any new area that is important for your organization or the industry that you want your teams to be trained on. Uh, so have a tailored training approach. Uh, Ideally, it would be you have certain trainings that you do on the job. Then there are some workshops, and then of course we have e-learning, which is a great source of learning foundational aspects of new technologies. Um, so when I look at my experience with on-the-job training, um, I would look at opportunities to shadow certain experts in that area. So whether it is say AI, ML, there are competencies within organizations where clearly you can communicate with them, and as you start shadowing them, try to see if you can get some hands-on practice and some real-time problem solving. I think that's key, because that's where you're actually understanding the challenges, understanding the opportunities. So number one, that's on the job training. Then of course, if you have the opportunity and the costs and the budget, try to organize a workshop that would and provide more structured learning sessions. Uh, Try to get the experienced trainers who can actually add value by training your team. And of course, self learning is always important. We don't have to say anything about it. So it's important for the team members to have a growth mindset. uh, Look at what is important for you, look at your career, why is this particular technology important for you, and try to learn them on your own, and and try to use the opportunities that most organizations provide today in terms of e-learning. uh, so I think these are the three ways by which we can try to bring up our team in terms and come up to speed with the technological advancements that are required for your organization and for the industry.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Arjit, for that. Great. Let's move on. So next question is again, I guess, is very common question. It's been asked
Yeah,
many times in most of the interviews. So as a project manager, how do you identify and manage your risk? So how do you prioritize your risk and how you create a plan to handle them, mitigate them? So if you want to just share your experience with respect to risk management, that will be great, Arjit.
sure, Sumant. Yeah, I think it's like the bread and butter of project management, because this is an area that we have to keep uh, monitoring and managing all the time throughout the duration of your project. Uh, so I think this is very common, and I have uh, also a very standard approach. So when do you identify risks? So if you're envisioning a product or a solution, you have a solutioning workshop, or a visioning workshop per se, and then that's where your risk identification starts. So the first step is you identify the risks. So in your and that risk could be uh, impacting one or more areas of your project over a period of time. So as you identify the risk, you assess its probability and impact. How often do you see that? What is the likelihood of that risk occurring? And what is your impact to your schedule, your costs, your quality, etc. And sometimes, when you have uh, at a program level, when you're looking at your whole bunch of risks, it's good to have a prioritized risks in the form of a matrix. So then, as a program manager, you are able to clearly look at your program level risks, and the potential or of it occurring in your program roadmap, right? So I think that's important deliverable or to track for a program manager. uh, of course, risks must have mitigations. So and it's really important for those high priority ones to have very clear mitigation plans, and we should plan for contingency, um, in terms of for resources, for costs, um, try to see uh, if any risks can be avoided or reduced. Um, and your whole goal again is to ensure that this does not become an issue over a period of time. So yes, so these are the three things: identification, your assessment, your mitigation strategies, and of course you need to have a process to monitor and adjust them on a regular basis and then report on them as well. So one of the one of the metrics for a project manager is definitely their risk exposure. So this is something that they have to look at it and report it, and as required, seek if required, seek the guidance from the governance board in terms of where the risk is, and how best it can be mitigated and so on. So
Great.
so that's about risk management.
Yeah. Great, Arjit. Yeah. Thank you for that. Great. So, yeah, let's move on. So this question is again, I think, is very important, which every project manager should know, that
Yeah.
how you track your project progress, their performance, and all these key milestones. So if you can share any, KPIs, like how you are going to measure your project success, and how do you communicate your project status, or progress, different matrices to the stakeholders, maybe the kind of reporting which you used to do, or some kind of dashboard which you have created. So yeah, Ajit.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sunand. I think this is a very important question for a project manager or a program manager, because at the end of the day, it's what you report on to the stakeholders, and how you engage them is important for the project success. So I would say, in terms of KPIs, I think the number one is the cost variance, is your difference, your deviation between actual and planned costs, and if there is any risk of this deviation, or either way, ensuring that your cost variance is manageable. Second thing is your certain quality metrics regarding your product or your service. So in any agile framework, we have the opportunity within various tools to track defects, uh, and then measure your performance, how many defects, what is the velocity. So all of those quality metrics, and then uh, how much of your iteration scope were you actually able to demonstrate at the end of the iteration, or what aspects of the product increment has been completed, or if there's something remaining. So I think this product quality is another key metric. Number three, in my opinion, is resource utilization. Um, so while it's important that we deliver the product increment and there's a continuous delivery of value. It's important that the resources are engaged efficiently, and that's number one. And number two is, of course, if there's any resource related risks. Uh, so both of them come under the ambit of resource utilization. And the fourth one, I think, as I was talking the previous question, is your overall risk exposure. So, uh, so if you have a good number of high priority risks, then I think that's a problem. So it's important to look at your risk register, or how your matrix, and assess the likelihood and the impact of those identified risks, and look at it if there's an overall threat to your project progress, or your project failing, right? So I think those are the key metrics for the project manager and for the project. Over to you, Sunand.
Okay, Arjit. Yeah, that's wonderful. So, Arjit, I think it's almost hour for us, so we don't want to extend this session too long. But of course, we have many more questions which are left, friends. So, but we definitely going to plan. We're going to meet again in next session, Arjit, for sure. So, with this, I think, yeah, friends, thank you for joining us for today's session, and we hope you find this session helpful and informative. And if you enjoyed this session, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. We hope to see you in our next session. Until then, take care. This is Sunan Sharma signing off. Thank you, everyone. Bye. And thank you, Arjit, one more time.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Arjit. Yeah.